Do you think finishing more music means trying harder and being more consistent? That's what I used to think. But last year I finished 31 tracks, all while working full-time, all without sacrificing quality, and I've been helping hundreds of producers finish more of their own. It's taken me 2 decades to figure this out, and almost every lesson I learned was the opposite of what you've been told. So to help you finish more tracks that feel like you, here are 7 lessons I wish I'd known sooner. The first lesson is the reverse of what many think. We're told that putting in more time and more effort makes our music better. At the start of last year I felt like every session had to be a banger. I'd open the door and I'd see a mountain to climb, sound design, full arrangements, endless automation, mixing, plug-in chains longer than my hairy arm, and that pressure to put in more effort and make every track a banger led to perfectionism and inaction. I know many of you have felt that. So to take the pressure off, I looked back to my younger years. I grew up loving hip-hop beats. They're short, they're simple, they're just one idea. So I started making those again. Like a warm-up, I tell myself this is going to be small and low effort. And once I got the wheels turning, it was so much easier to keep moving. Some of those sketches stayed as one neat idea, others evolved into meatier tracks and it felt effortless. So lesson 1 is this: not every track has to be epic. Give yourself permission to make something small. Set aside an evening, make a low effort track, call it done. It's the perfect warm-up, and let it evolve into something bigger if it wants to. Low stakes is how you start. And shout out to producer Alchemy, who made a great video on high versus low effort tracks, which is well worth checking out. Okay, lesson 2. Now you're in the chair and you've started, but starting is only half the battle. Because for years I kept hitting the same wall. I'd make a loop and I was buzzing about it, but when I came back to it later, the arrangement never lived up to the potential of that initial loop. The magic was gone. Like reheating pizza. And last year I properly figured out why. The tracks that I finished smoothly all had one thing in common: momentum. I stopped making loops and leaving them, and I made sure I laid out the structure on the timeline while the idea was still hot. So loop to track in one go. So now I don't start a track unless I've got at least an hour spare. That's my main session. In that time, my only goal is to go from loop to structure. Even if it's rough, I get the main shape down. Then I finish it in short sessions later, again to keep that momentum flowing. And I know this works for others too. This system has been helping producers train their decision-making skills and finish. You can see some of the messages I've had. So lesson 2 is this: protect momentum at all costs. Avoid anything that might kill your flow. No more loops. Alright, time for lesson 3. You might be thinking, this is all fine, but I can't always carve out an hour to make music. Life gets in the way. And here's why that's a good thing. Everyone talks about being consistent. Make music every day. And when you're still learning, consistency helps. But last year I finally accepted something about myself. I'm not consistent at all with music. Some weeks I get obsessed and I'll work on track after track like a rabid dog hounding a squeaky toy. Other weeks it's tumbleweed, I make no music at all. In previous years I'd have stressed about that. I'd convinced myself I was falling behind. But last year I stopped fighting it. I work in bursts, intense output, and then quiet periods where my creativity recharges, and that hunger makes the next burst even better. So lesson 3 is to understand your rhythm and work with it. Work in bursts when the energy is there and rest when it's not there. By the way, if you want to go deeper on the habits of prolific producers and how they work, I've put together a free guide. You can grab the PDF at the link below. Okay, now on to lesson 4. When you work in sprints like this, you'll probably stack up a lot of unfinished projects. I used to scroll through my hundreds of half-finished ideas and I'd feel guilty because it felt like a graveyard. It was proof that I couldn't finish anything. But this is what changed for me. Think of those video games where you find an area early on that you can't access. You have to play through the game and gather the required stats and tools so you can then go back and unlock that area later. That is what old projects are like. Most of the tracks I finished last year were started 1, 2, even 5 and 10 years earlier. I go back to old ideas and the path to finishing them becomes clear. Right now I've got a bunch of projects from last year just sat there and I'm totally comfortable with that. I don't think they're dead anymore, they're just waiting for me to come in and finish them. So lesson number 4, never delete your old projects. Your unfinished tracks are not a graveyard. Think of it as an endless well of ideas you're just not ready for right now. but you will be later. Okay, next, lesson number 5 is about a certain type of overthinking that's probably weighing you down. I used to worry that my workflow wasn't optimal, or that I didn't use every keyboard shortcut. Everyone talks about being more efficient, learn every tool inside out. Even as someone who was editor of a music tutorial magazine and has made hundreds of tutorials, I'd still always feel like I was falling behind or that I didn't quite know enough. But last year was the year that I stopped chasing that. I work in my own way. I'm messy. No, not that. I don't name and colour every single track, at least not in every session. I'm totally inconsistent. I like to fling ideas around and I enjoy the chaos. And by embracing my dysfunctions, I finished more tracks than ever. And most importantly, I enjoyed it. In my loop track workout, I make a track from start to finish. And what's funny is that you can see in the video that I'm not perfect, but I get the job done and I have fun doing it. So lesson 5 is to know thy workflow, understand yourself, accept yourself, and work with your limitations. Don't stress if you're not learning every new feature or keyboard shortcut. Doing something imperfectly and enjoying it beats over-optimizing every time. Now on to lesson number 6. Once you stop chasing the perfect workflow, there's another trap waiting. All the advice telling you how you should produce and what your music should sound like. Keep it simple, use fewer elements, strip it back. You hear it everywhere, and it's not wrong, but this is my tune Light Up, and it's got 78 tracks. Other projects were complex and needed lots of layers and tons of channels, because that's what they needed. So lesson number 6, every track needs what it needs. Some of my tracks had less than 10 channels, others had up to 100. Common advice is a starting point, not an absolute truth, and there are always exceptions. Now for lesson number 7, this is the one that ties all of this together and made everything possible last year. You know those ideas you make that are extra special? I mean those tracks where the core idea is noticeably better than all of your others. For those, I'd spend extra time on them, I'd stress about getting them perfect, and then they'd always come out worse because I'd get too precious and overcook them. But it goes further than that. Check this out, these are 2 comments on the exact same track, and if you let either extreme get in your head, that affects your art. The praise makes you chase that sound again and that validation, and the hate makes you second guess yourself. Either way, you stop trusting what you're doing. So the biggest change for me last year was that I treated every idea as equal. I stayed detached and impartial. I don't mean like a robot. I enjoy my music and I care about it, but I worked through what was there and moved on. No chasing praise and no running from criticism. And something funny that many of you will relate to, your favourite tracks are never anyone else's favourite. The ones you think are meh are the ones people like more, and the track that you think is your ultimate masterpiece is the exact one that nobody gives a donkey's about. So lesson number 7 is to be indifferent about individual tunes, because in my experience, the less precious you are about a track, the better it turns out. You stay detached and let the music be what it wants to be. So those are the 7 lessons I learned that helped me finish 31 tracks in 1 year. Warm up with lower effort tracks. Keep that initial momentum flowing. Work in seasons that fit how you work. Never delete old projects. Understand your limitations and work with them. Give every track what it needs, and don't get too precious about some tracks over others. If you want to check out my full system for finishing tracks, head to loop2track.com or click the link below. And there are 3 bigger overriding habits that all prolific producers share. To find out what they are, download my free PDF below, and to see and hear them in video form, go and watch this video next.